going?
Hey, Karen.
Hi, Rob.
Let's go meet Rudy.
Okay, let's go
It's
meet
gonna
Rudy.
be fun.
It is. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, we have to right now with our Canadian dollar's not doing so well. Yeah.
Hey, Roy. How are you doing?
Good, good. Did you meet Rudy last time?
I did not meet Rudy.
Oh, you didn't?
Hi, Rudy.
Rudy, this is Rob.
It's your older brother. How are you?
He's all the way from Nova Scotia just to say hello to you.
Really? Wow.
I actually came here from California on the train.
It's beautiful weather today.
Yeah,
huh?
isn't it though?
Isn't it amazing how nice it is already
Oh,
in just
boy,
a couple
yeah.
hours?
Hi there. Hi, how you doing?
You remember Karen, don't you, over here?
Huh?
You remember Karen?
Yeah.
Denise's
Yeah, I just haven't
Denise's
been a while.
sister?
I've been sick.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't want to. I'll
Okay.
give you a kind
This
of
is
a.
my brother Rudy here.
Hi, Rudy. Nice to meet you, Karen White. We've been looking forward to meeting
Hi, girls.
you. And
Hi
this is
there.
our cousins from Kentucky.
Oh, from Kentucky.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Karen, that's my daughter Victoria there.
Oh,
That's your daughter? Oh, wow.
How nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you, Karen.
Well, he's a celebrity. Roy is a celebrity out here on the beach.
From Lake Erie, these two.
Yeah, we're from
Yeah.
Lake Erie, Canada, and she's Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow.
A little different weather here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a little different. You
Our
got
lake
that
is
right.
frozen right now.
It's frozen up there?
Frozen.
Oh, wow.
I'm so glad you could come to paradise.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You had 2 feet of snow, right?
2 feet. Yeah, Mom just showed
Yep.
me both driveways
look
had 2
at.
feet of snow.
Everybody
Get
can
back home, I'll
make
show you
comments,
where
yeah.
pictures he took of you right now.
Yep.
Yep.
So how long are you down here for, Rudy?
Mommy's got it.
Till what? Thursday?
Little
Till
louder.
Thursday? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's leaving Thursday morning. Tomorrow we hope to go out on the old Sweet Liberty to go sailing.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, that's a
Yep.
good time.
Does Rudy? Does he like the water as much as
Oh,
you?
he's a big sailor.
Oh, right?
Yeah,
A sailor?
Big sailboat. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, he had a boat yard. He used to make boats.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Build them.
You just every time you tell me a story, you amaze me. Your family, you guys did a little bit of everything.
Well, we had a good time in life, that's for sure.
Was Rudy in the military also?
Yeah, he was in the Navy. In fact,
In
he
the
was on
Navy.
the old Iowa the same time I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Gosh.
yeah.
So you're on the ship together, huh?
Yeah, we were.
Wow, I didn't know they did that.
Well, they usually don't. Somehow my dad knew a congressman, and I don't know how he got that arranged, but Rudy was on the effect. He was on the Missouri when MacArthur signed with the Japanese. The
Really?
surrender. You were there, weren't you, Rudy? On the Missouri? You were on the Missouri when MacArthur.
No, the Iowa. I was on
Yeah,
the
but
Iowa.
weren't you on when MacArthur signed with the Japanese?
I was the first American naval officer to set foot in Japan because I took the surrender of the Yokosuka Naval Base 3 days before the formal surrender on the Missouri took place.
Yeah, I thought you were there.
Wow.
Yeah.
They sent me ashore in case the Japanese were engaged in treachery, but they weren't.
Treachery, huh?
These two admirals responded in their uniforms, and medals came down to the wharf. I was just in my working uniform, and they bowed low and presented their swords and said, "We hereby surrender." I said, "Oh, keep your swords until the admirals come ashore." And then there was a little bit of discussion between the two of them. And then one said, "Well, while you're waiting for the admirals, would you like to come up to the officers' club for a spot of tea?" Now that's
That was
These were the
something.
Japanese
Right.
generals?
well, that's very Japanese admiral. He might have been a naval attaché in London before the war, because this is very British. A spot of tea.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
American.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
So then,
that's fascinating.
you see, the Iowa was the flagship of the fleet, and the surrender was supposed to take place on the Iowa, but Harry Truman, who was a new president, was from Missouri, and he ordered that the surrender should take place on the Missouri. So everything had to be changed at the last minute, and it was decided that the Missouri would come alongside the Iowa, so all the admirals in his retinue and other stuff could go just be transferred by walking from ship to ship.
Wow.
And I was walking around. I was in damage control central, but I walked around on the deck and I saw the Missouri coming, so I went down below with the annunciator and said, "Now hear this, all divisions empty your trash cans in the trash lighter now coming alongside the starboard."
Is that what you said about the
Yeah,
Missouri?
and that blasted out over all the deck speakers, and of course the people on the Missouri weren't too pleased.
That's
And
a
it
good one.
There had to be an official investigation, although everybody on the Iowa thought it was wonderful because after the war, the Missouri went on a world cruise, you know, to show the flag,
Yeah.
and we basically sat there in Yokosuka for another 3 or 4 months. And so anyway,
The trash
they
lighter to
had
starboard,
they
didn't
had to
that?
have an investigation, and they asked me whether I heard it, and I said yes, but they didn't ask me whether I did it.
That's the greatest story I ever
That's
heard.
right. You don't want to give up any information.
I never heard that one, Rudy. That's a good one.
That is a good story. Wow.
The trash lighter to starboard Harrison, Missouri. Didn't you see MacArthur signed with the Japanese guy with his top hat and tails when they signed the surrender?
Well, we were all standing at attention during the ceremonies on the Iowa, and I could see everything that took place.
Oh.
It all took place on the forward deck of the Missouri, and we were about maybe 100 feet away from it. You know.
That's how you saw
Yeah.
it. I got
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
you. Yeah, I guess the Japanese, well, I've seen a picture of it, he had his top hat and his
Oh,
tails,
yeah.
and MacArthur was sitting there with his shirt open and not his uniform jacket on or anything, very informal.
Yep.
You've
There's
probably
lots of
seen
pictures
this-
of that.
Read the book or seen the movie, the Kane Mutiny, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was about Captain. In the book, he was called Captain Quigley, but this was based on a real man. His name was Quigley, and he'd been the captain of the destroyer that Herman Wouk, the author of the book, had served aboard. But Quigley was transferred from command of that destroyer to executive officer of the Iowa, and he rolled his steel balls. And when he came aboard, he called all the officers into the wardroom, and he said, I hate ensigns. That was what I was, one junior officer. I hate ensigns. If I take starboard, you take port. And then he rolled his balls a little bit more.
So he really did. It was a true
So
life guy.
I actually served under him. He was quite a martinet. And
wow.
Anyway, I have to tell you a little story about him. He was on an inspection tour of the forward part of the ship, and in this one storeroom there were 2,000 cots, you know, these folding cots. And he said, "How many cots in here, ensign?" And I said, 2,000, sir. He said, "Throw 1,000 of them overboard." Aye, aye, sir. So I'm a conservative type of person. I couldn't see throwing 1,000 cots over the side. So I realized he never inspected both ends of the vessel on the same day, you know. So I had the men transfer the 1,000 back aft. Now the war's ended, and Bupers knows that the Iowa has 2,000 cots on board, and we were to take 2,000 repatriated American prisoners of war back home when we went. We made a fast trip back shortly after the end of the war, and so then Quigley calls me into his office and said, we have a problem. And he said, you know, I ordered you to throw 1,000 cots over the side. Now we need 2,000. Do you think if I give you 3 days leave ashore, you can either borrow or steal 1,000 cots? And I said, I'll try, sir. And he said, okay, off you go. So I went to the Mianoshta, which is a nice resort town with a nice little Japanese hotel where the two Japanese ladies, you can't even undress or dress yourself. You know, they do everything for you. That's what happens in a Japanese hotel.
Wow.
So I spent 3 delightful days there. When I came back, the officer of the deck said, "Where are the cots?" And I said, "You don't suppose that I would, if I was stealing cots, I would have them brought aboard in the broad day? They were brought snuck aboard last night and put in a compartment back aft."
That's the
Oh
best
my
story I
gosh.
ever heard.
Oh, wow.
That's a good one, Rudy. I never heard that story.
You guys are alike.
And then the captain of the Iowa at that time, we changed captains a lot. The executive officer remained for a long time because I was so good at stealing cots. They asked me if they could give me 3 days and I could steal a Jeep, because the captain had put in a requisition for he wanted to have a Jeep with Iowa painted on it, and when they went someplace, he wouldn't have to try to, to get a car from the carpool. He just put the Iowa Jeep ashore. So I was given the assistance of a motor Mac. We went off with a pot of quick drying gray paint and stencils that said USS Iowa, and we went to Tokyo. This is, a few weeks after the end of the war, and we drove around, and we found an army Jeep parked outside a geisha house with the black shoes of an American sailor. He was
A
in there.
geisha house, huh? That's a good one.
This is on a back street, so we quickly painted this olive drab Jeep gray, and then stenciled USS Iowa. Now the motor Mac knew how to short the ignition, and he got it started. So I drove the vehicle we came in back, and he drove the new Iowa Jeep back. and as a result of that, Admiral Halsey used that Jeep. Nobody knew other than Quigley that we'd stolen it, and so that stolen Jeep was used by Admiral Halsey as the head of the Rose Bowl parade, and he didn't know anything about me stealing the Jeep, but he's the one that had decided to send me ashore, risk my life to take the surrender in case there was some treachery. So as a reward for that, Admiral Halsey invited me to be his honor guard. So we sat in the Jeep, the driver in front, and then Halsey and I.
No kidding, you were the
at the head
admiral?
of the 1946 Rose Bowl parade.
Wow.
And you've seen it on TV,
Oh,
great
yeah.
floats and everything. And then there's the famous Rose Bowl football game in the afternoon. And the amazing thing is, the parade, of course, proceeded very slowly. But then when it was time to, at the end of the parade, to go to the football stadium, motorcycles with screaming sirens went in front. We were traveling at about 30, 40 miles an hour, and the streets in Pasadena were full with people. But this is one of the amazing experiences of my life, to be in a vehicle moving at a good speed and see the people just fold this way, they get out of the way so they don't get mowed down, and you scream down this street with the people rushing to one side or the other. So then
Wow.
we went to the football game, and that's it.
Wow.
Hey, what a story.
Yeah.
Rudy, I want to shake your hand again.
Well,
You know what? You had a very interesting life.
Well, you mentioned about, there's a picture of me and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the Facebook, because people, when they look me up, they can find a picture of me with the Prime Minister.
Wow.
You see, Justin Trudeau was a friend of mine. He was an environmentalist. We worked together for quite a few years before he decided to go into politics. And he called me Rudy, I called him Justin. But now that he's Prime Minister, I'm a little bit leery of calling him. When I write a letter, Dear Justin, I write, Dear prime minister, but then I still sign it Rudy. Yeah.
That is.
That's fabulous.
Thank you for
That's
sharing
so-
those stories.
Well,
thank you
yeah,
so
what a
much.
time.
Thank you,
Good history.
and thank you for your
Well,
service.
I don't see Facebook, but I appreciate your
Oh,
doing that.
Royal,
You'll see
Royal
this,
share it.
yeah.
Yeah, Royal share it with you.
That must have been before I got on the Iowa then, all that.
Yeah.
Because remember, I joined the
Well,
Iowa then.
there's that classic picture of the two of us on the Iowa in 1946
Yeah.
forward, and it was, what was it, 3 years ago now? The Iowa was taken out of mothball, and a group of men, mostly who had served aboard the Iowa after World War II, were turning her into a museum ship, and she was in right there in front of Berkeley. What's the name of that naval base?
I don't know.
I
You
can't
know,
think
Roy?
of it. Richmond, I think. Richmond, California. That's in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it just so happened that that weekend, the only 2 days that they were there, while they were fitting her out before she was towed to L.A., I visited my son Leaf and family in Berkeley, and he could look down from his house and see the ship. So we went there and said, you know, Leaf told them that I was an officer aboard the Iowa during World War II. Wow, they didn't know any officer was still alive who had served aboard the Iowa during the war. These guys, the oldest ones there, had served aboard in the Korean War. That was as far as they went. So they invited me aboard, and then they called the TV people, and I had a nice interview on deck about my experiences aboard the Iowa during the war.
Well, my daughter Catherine and I want to go to L.A. one of these years and go aboard the Iowa. I guess it's a museum.
She's in L.A. right now.
Yeah.
And the Queen Mary, of course, is in Long Beach.
Yeah.
That's a very nice old passenger ship.
Yeah. So we want to go aboard and see it in L.A. there and check things out. See if the 16-inch cannons are still working.
Yeah, well, remember when you came aboard, and then we went back to Japan again after the war, and we traveled around quite a bit together. And remember this time we took the train up to Gotemba?
Gotemba.
And we, only after we got there did we realize after the train had left, that was the last train of the day. We were stuck. This was winter. It was cold, you know. This was
up in the mountains,
sort of in the foothills of the mountains, and they closed the railroad station. Here we were, dark, walking around. What were we going to do? When we walked past these houses, there was one with a little glow on it. So we knocked on the door, and the man opened it. To his great shock, he sees the enemy for the first time.
That's right. He was very hospitable. Didn't we stay there overnight? Yeah.
They had 4 daughters. They paraded the 4 daughters, and we said no. And the mother, remember, the mother gave us this wonderful hug because they thought that we were just looking for sex, but we were looking for a little warmth. So
that's right. They kept us overnight, didn't they?
Yeah. We spent the whole night with keeping our hands warm on that little hibachi, and the mother and the daughters went to sleep, but the father stayed up, of course, all night too.
Yeah, we hovered around their little stove.
Hovered around.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
All night long.
Yeah, that was our best experience together in Japan.
I'd forgotten that. And they couldn't speak a word of English, I don't think, could they?
Yeah.
That was really something. Here, this treaty just been signed a week or so before that.
Hey, Roy.
What a deal.
There's some great stories. I got to get rolling along here. I got to shove off.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing your brother out here.
Well, it's a delight. And we'll see all this on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'll show them when we get back home there.
Yes. Thank you so much again. Thank you
thank you
for sharing those stories.
I'll head out to